Hello, everyone. I hope that you had a good day on Monday for Indigenous Peoples Day and celebrated in some way to think about our heritage. Today, we're going to dive in right away to our topic for today, climate chaos. And I want to highlight this piece of artwork that I think is particularly beautiful. It was done by a middle schooler, and he wrote this sentence. He wrote this statement about this piece of art. When I first decided to draw my artwork, I thought of drawing a little polar bear on a block of melting ice, signifying how global warming is affecting our oceans. Then I learned how the thickness and extent of the Arctic ice has been declining rapidly over the past decades, and how glaciers are also retreating almost everywhere around the world, from the Alps, the Himalayas, the Andes, the Rockies, Alaska, and Africa. And then I realized that I should be drawing a bear that has already sunk, not one floating on melting ice. This gave me a clearer picture of how our glaciers and ocean animals are sinking away too fast, and it inspired me to draw Sinking Beauty. Sinking Beauty is an illustration of a polar bear sinking from the destruction of humans, displaying the cold, hard facts from our torture of the ocean on its fur. In the end, I hope the viewer understands this ghastly change to our Earth from my piece and stands with me against this outrage. From a middle schooler who's obviously taking time and energy to feel his way into what's happening on our planet. And so it made me ask, what blocks me from feeling sometimes? And I discovered that it's the time and the rush and the anxiety and the stress, often pushed by culture. To feel requires that I stop and pay attention. And I feel like this student has shared exactly that story, where he learned, he stopped, he paid attention, and he shared this beautiful work of art. So let's stop thinking out there and start feeling right here. And so in order to do that today, as our preparation for the class, I'd like you to rub your hands briskly together, rubbing them and feeling the energy, the heat that's created. And even if you separate your hands, you may be able to feel the energy that's coursing between your hands. There's a certain amount of energy created. And then shake it out. Shake out that energy. So what we're talking about today is really hard, and there's a lot to it. I have a friend who's taking a course in climate change, and it's 30 hours, and we're squeezing this into 50 minutes. But I'm going to try to hit the most important points, but I'm going to go fast because there's so much, and it's so important. The scientific evidence for warming of the climate system is unequivocal. Unequivocal means that there's no debate about whether it's happening or not. Scientists agree that it's happening. The world is on fire, from the Amazon to California, from Australia to the Siberian Arctic. The hour is late, and the moment is of consequence. So long delayed, it's now upon us. Do we watch the world burn, or do we choose to do what's necessary to achieve a different future? We have known about the possibility of climate change since the 1930s, and we've been certain since the 1960s that it's happening, when geochemist Charles Keeling measured CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere and detected an annual rise. And yet, since then, little has been done to counter the effects. Absent heroic efforts, the world is locked in on dangerous climate change, and that's according to a very recent report. 2018, a report was published by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. That stark but blunt assessment comes after years of deliberation at the request of the world's most vulnerable nations. And we need to limit global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is the upper limit that would preserve the stability of the world's interconnected ecological and societal systems. So we're going to dive in and see what's really going on with climate change. So climate is the overarching patterns of weather. So we can look at a chart like this and see where the temperature anomalies are, where they're changing. And it's in degrees Celsius on the left-hand side, and years since 1880 to about, it looks like 2014 or 15, something like that, 14. And so the global climate is changing. You see where all the red lines are? Those are the years that it was above the average. In the last 650,000 years, there have been seven cycles of glacial advance and retreat. And so global warming has its natural tendencies and curves. And that's why there is variation in what you're seeing here. But there's no, it's just so rapidly increasing right now that it's obvious that this is not one of those natural cycles. And so why is the Earth warming? So some scientists a while back thought, well, maybe the sun is to blame. Is it getting brighter? And the reports say, no. Actually, the satellite data shows a very slight drop in solar irradiance, the measure of the energy that the sun gives off. So the sun is not getting brighter. And then I thought about, well, we've paved a lot. So is it that there's more pavement, like blacktop? And you know how in the summer when you walk on blacktop and your feet get super hot, as opposed to even on a lighter colored sidewalk, that blacktop, the macadam holds more heat. So maybe that was it. But again, that's not the case. Satellite data shows that is not what's happening. And so we've come now to what you all probably know is that the Earth's atmosphere is trapping heat. It's like the greenhouse where the sun goes in, and the solar radiation comes in, and then as energy is meant to escape so that it doesn't keep heating things up. But the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are reflecting much of the energy back to Earth. And so in this very simple diagram, we can see Earth's atmosphere is 50 to 60 miles of gases held in place by gravity. So if we didn't have it, the oceans would be frozen, life wouldn't exist, all of those things. 50 to 60 miles is all there is. I think of it as a lot that's protecting us, but really, I could hop in my car and over the course of these 50 minutes, I could have driven out of the atmosphere if such thing was possible. Not in a rocket ship, in my car. I could drive out of the atmosphere in an hour or less. So there's very little actually that's protecting us up there. And when those gases are getting caught, it's the heat trapping nature of carbon dioxide and methane and nitrous oxide and water vapor. And it's there that the energy gets reflected back. It's these bouncing rays that we need to be concerned about. And a lot of this comes from fossil fuels. They are trapping the heat in the atmosphere. we'll talk about this a little bit more on Monday, the role of fossil fuels, and a little bit more later in this course or in this class period too. But that is the major cause of this climate change. So if we look at this data, these are the ice ages. You can see the carbon dioxide level is the column on the left. And then the years before today. So this is going back 400,000 years ago. And they're measuring atmospheric carbon dioxide in ice sheets, ice cores. Is one way. They draw those ice cores from Greenland, from Antarctica, from tropical mountain glaciers that show that the Earth's climate responds to changes for sure in these greenhouse gas levels. Ancient evidence can also be found in tree rings, in ocean sediments, coral reefs, and sedimentary rock. So they're using all of those different resources to see about the parts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so you can see that prior to this time, we hadn't reached anything above just over 300 parts per million. And it's just continued to go up. So now if you look at the chart, draw that line straight across from the peak, and we're looking at now 400 parts per million. We're warming at rates that are 10 times faster than before. And so that's what's having an effect on our climate, what's having an effect on the weather, the temperature. We're going to look at this quick chart, this way of looking at the temperature, that it will, how the average temperatures have changed from 1880 to 2014. And so Pedro's going to start this video for us.
Do you want me to play it twice, Jen?
Let me say something more and then I'll have you play it one more time. So you can see how the temperatures go from the darker blue to the lighter blue, and there's lots of variation as it goes on, but then the amount of yellows and oranges increase significantly from the beginning until the end of this period. So yes, will you play it one more time, Pedro?
Yes, I got you.
Thank you.
We're back with you, Jen.
Thank you. So it's a relatively dramatic shift in color representation of those temperatures. And what they're representing is 1 degree and 2 degree above the normal, above the average. Back to that meeting in October of 2018, these folks, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is made up of scientists from all over the world doing all kinds of different research related to climate change. So some of them are studying glaciers, and some of them are studying gases in the atmosphere, and it goes on and on. So many different experts. They have claimed this 1.5 degree rise above Celsius is the threshold before things really get chaotic. Keep in mind that we are already at least 1 degree above average. So we have about half of a degree Celsius before chaos happens. And they're saying that this could happen 11 years from now. So it's not something that's going to happen after we're all gone. This is going to happen in our lifetime. By 2030, we need to have this going in reverse. The trends that we have going now need to be going in reverse. Otherwise, we will precipitate the rise of extreme drought, more wildfires, more floods, more food shortages that are going to affect hundreds of millions, if not billion, people on our planet. So, this report was launched 2 years ago. What has been done? What has changed? Well, we'll talk about that. Here we go. So, the oceans are expected to continue getting warmer, both in the top layer and in the deeper waters. Even if people stop right now adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, the oceans will continue to get warmer for many years because they're slowly absorbing the heat from the moisture, from the atmosphere. Extra heat gets absorbed by the ocean. And this matters significantly because warmer oceans affect weather patterns, they cause more powerful tropical storms, and can impact many kinds of sea life: corals, fish, octopus, arthropods, all kinds of things. The ocean has absorbed about 30% of all the carbon dioxide we humans have sent into the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution, about 150 billion tons of CO2. This great service, which has substantially slowed global warming, has been accomplished at great cost. According to the research, as the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide, the ocean increases in acidity. It's about 30 times greater than natural variation, and the average surface ocean pH has dropped by, they say, by zero point 0.1 unit, but by 0.1 in this case, it's a really significant amount. This acidification is reducing the amount of sulfur that's flowing out of the ocean into the atmosphere, and that reduces reflection of solar radiation. And so it's not just that things are getting warmer, it's affecting all of the way that the oceans work. There's a positive feedback loop that could create a runaway kind of climate change and even more disastrous effects on the ocean. Antarctica is melting from beneath. Not just that the air temperature is melting the glaciers, but the water temperature underneath. Antarctica holds about 60% of the planet's fresh water locked into its massive ice sheet. Ocean waters melting the undersides of the Antarctic ice shelves are responsible for most of the continent's ice shelf mass loss. So the fact that the ocean is warmer underneath is what's causing the greatest change in Antarctica. It depends. It's all about their measuring elevation and the velocity, how fast things are melting, and comparing that mass lost with the amount released by the calving or the splitting of icebergs. So it's a combination of effects that's causing this melting. And then in the Arctic, satellites have provided a reliable tool for continuously monitoring changes in the Arctic ice since 1979. Every summer, the Arctic ice cap melts to what the scientists call its minimum before the colder weather begins to cause more formation of ice. So what they're doing is measuring the minimum amount of summer ice. And we're going to watch another quick clip here. Watch the graph as it changes. So we're looking at 1979 to 1984 here. So let's check out this video.
We're back with you, Jen.
Thank you, Pedro. So you can see that the lowest amount of summer sea ice, the minimum sea ice cover, was in 2012. And then we've been up and down since then. The statistics aren't in yet for 2020. And so we'll have to see how that yields. But you can see the idea that it has been in constant decline since 1979. So we're going to take what I call, what my kids' teachers call a brain break, and watch this clip by Liam Neeson and the Conservation International.
I am ice. I move slowly. I keep the world cool. Well, I used to. But humans keep warming this planet. I try to warn you. I send pieces of me thundering into the ocean. You do nothing. I raise sea levels. You do nothing. It has taken you decades to notice. Perhaps I'm not so slow after all.
So as he mentions there, the ice mentions all of those effects. So the sea level rise, global sea level rose about 6.7 inches in the last 100 years. But the rate in the last 10 years is nearly double that of the last century. Due to the rising temperatures of the ocean, the land, and the atmosphere, sea levels are rising. Elizabeth Wheaton, who is the Director of Environment and Sustainability for Miami Beach, states, "There is so much misinformation about what's happening, and that's what breeds skepticism. It's so important as a region that we go beyond the conversation of if it is happening to how, as a region, we need to be preparing. Miami Beach is affected by the sea level rise. The sea levels are rising." Here is the graph about that. You'll notice as it goes through, Pedro's going to play this video as well, that it's wavy. That's like the month by month. It's charting monthly changes. So let's watch this.
Back with you, Jen.
Thanks, Pedro. When you listen to the radio in stereo and you crank the volume all the way up, there will come to a point where you get a distorted sound, where the sound doesn't make sense. The speakers aren't keeping up with the wavelengths of the music. It's the distortion. And those sound waves are bouncing all around and creating chaos. And that's what's happening on our planet now. All of this imbalance affects the flow of energy on Earth. And yet there are people that believe that this is not happening. Those who deny that climate change is happening, for some, that's because global warming is a business opportunity. As those ice sheets thaw in the Arctic, it opens more space for drilling. Our global economy runs on fossil fuels. So why stop using it if it makes the world run? Why not open the Arctic National Refuge to drilling? In August of this year, the Trump administration said that it will open the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to drilling, a move that allows oil and gas rights to be auctioned off in the heart of one of the nation's most iconic wild places. Achieving a goal that Republicans have sought for 40 years, the auction and action marks a capstone for this administration that has ignored the calls to reduce fossil fuel consumption in the face of climate change. The move will allow leasing on 1.6 million areas of coastal plain. It's part of a nearly pristine wilderness that's home to migrating caribou, waterfowl, polar bears, and foxes that live there year-round. It marks a major step toward reviving fossil fuel development that has been protected for 3 decades. And right now, at this really crucial time. Looking here at this graph, I know this is a lot of graphs at once, but it's because so many different things are being affected and doing the affecting. So looking at this, the gray is the coals, the red is the natural gas, and the green is the oil. The others, there's the renewables, that's orange, hydroelectricity, and nuclear, which is that little, so that encompasses, those 3 colors are the little band in the middle. Otherwise, the rest of them that rules our world energy consumption are non-renewable fossil fuels. Speaking now just for the United States, if we look at these the 3 big blocks, coal, natural gas, and petroleum, all 86% of what we use is the non-renewables. So in 2015, leaders from 195 countries gathered in Paris to sort out an international strategy for addressing climate change. And at the meeting, those 195 countries agreed to aim to cut greenhouse gas emissions to limit the global temperature rise. The Trump administration formally notified the United Nations last November that they would withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement on climate change, leaving global climate diplomats to plot a way forward without the cooperation of the world's largest economy, which is ours. So there are things that we can do as individuals, and there are things that we need to do as a nation, and there are things that we need to do for the world. And thinking about fossil fuel consumption is one that we need to do on all 3 of those levels. I used to say that Americans are not under as much climate pressure as other people of the world, other countries. But considering the hurricanes that the Louisiana Delta has experienced this year, I don't know that those statement is true any longer. The number of people that have experienced the quick succession that are without power to this day. Um, it's all those massive storms in quick succession are a direct result of climate change. There are other places that are experiencing different kinds of tumult. It might be permanent flooding that has changed their landscape. People that are trying to escape the high waters. They've been displaced by catastrophic weather disasters each year over and over and need to find new homes. Climate change worsens storms and droughts. Climate scientists and migration experts expect the number of people affected to rise significantly. So, to think about the droughts, I don't just mean sometimes it's dry, I mean always it's dry. It's desertification, creating deserts where there were not deserts before. Burkina Faso is one of the countries most affected by desertification. It's an irreversible process that affects the Earth's surface, where the topsoil has disappeared, the soil underneath it has been degraded, and the nutrients have been lost, and therefore, obviously, there is decreased land fertility. Often, then, also the soil salinity, the salt levels, are rising, which intensifies erosive phenomenon. The winds, it dries everything out even more, as well as landslides and other extreme climatic effects. So at this point, we have looked at the graphs of temperature increase, Arctic ice decrease, sea level rise, the use of fossil fuels, and think back to that moment of the idea that it's out of whack, out of order, it's distortion, it's chaos. The systems are out of balance, and it's only going to get worse. I'd like you to hear now from two ladies from very different places in the world and really listen to the message that they have to offer.
Sister of ice and snow, I'm coming to you from the land of my ancestors, from atolls, sunken volcanoes, undersea descent of sleeping giants.
Sister of ocean and sand, I welcome you to the land of my ancestors, to the land where they sacrificed their lives to make mine possible, to the land of survivors.
I'm coming to you from the land my ancestors chose, Island Kainan, Marshall Islands, a country more sea than land.
I welcome you to Gadashiknunat, Greenland, the biggest island on Earth.
With me, I bring these shells that I picked from the shores of Bikini Atoll and Brunette Dome.
In my hand I hold these rocks, picked from the shores of Nuuk, the foundation of the land I call my home.
With these shells, I bring with me a story of long ago. Two sisters frozen in time on the island of Wuyai. One magically turned to stone. The other who chose that life to be rooted by her sister's side. To this day, the two sisters can be seen by the edge of the reef, a lesson in permanence.
With these rocks I bring a story told countless times, a story about Sisuma Amna, mother of the sea, who lives in a cave at the bottom of the ocean. This is a story about the guardian of the sea. She sees the greed in our hearts, the disrespect in our eyes. Every whale, every stream, every iceberg are her children. When we disrespect them, she gives us what we deserve, a lesson in respect. Do we deserve the melting ice, the hungry polar bears coming to our islands, or the colossal icebergs hitting these waters with rage? From one island to another,
I ask for solutions, one island to another.
I ask for your problems.
Let me show you the tide, coming for us faster than we'd like to admit. Let me show you airports underwater, bulldozed reefs, blasted sands, and plans to build new atolls, forcing land from an ancient rising sea, forcing us to imagine turning ourselves to stone.
Can you see a glacier's grown the weight of the world's heat? I wait for you, here on the land of my ancestors, heart heavy with a continuous thirst for solutions. As I watch this land change while the world remains silent.
Sister of ice and snow, I come to you now, in grief,
Mourning landscapes that are always forced to change. First, through wars inflicted on us,
then through nuclear waste dumped in our waters,
on our ice,
and now
this. Sister of ocean and sand, I offer you these rocks, the foundation of my home. May the same unshakable foundation connect us, make us stronger than these colonizing monsters that still to this day devour our lives. The very same beasts that now decide who should live,
who should die. Sister of ice and snow, I offer you these shells and the story of the two sisters as testament, as declaration that despite what we are told, we will not leave. We will choose stone. We will choose to be rooted to this reef forever. From these islands,
we ask for solutions.
From these islands,
we ask, we demand that the world see beyond
ACs, SUVs, their pre-packaged convenience, their oil-slick dreams.
Beyond the belief that tomorrow will never happen, that this is merely an inconvenient truth.
Let me bring my home to yours.
Let's watch as Miami, New York, Shanghai, Amsterdam, London, Rio de Janeiro, and Osaka try to breathe underwater. You think you have decades before your home falls beneath tides?
We have years, we have months before you sacrifice us again, before you watch from your TV screens and computer screens to see if we will still be breathing while you do nothing.
My sister, I offer you these rocks as a reminder that our lives matter more than their power. That life in all form demands the same respect we all give to money.
That these issues will affect each and every one of us. None of us is immune.
And that each and every one of us has to decide if we will rise.
Pretty powerful to think about different perspectives. So I'd like you to take 3 minutes now in your Zoom groups to consider this question. What does this image have to do with climate change? So, what if you feel about climate change? What if I put feeling into this? What if you care? But sometimes the problem can seem so big, and I can feel or see myself as so small. I'm just one person. In light of these huge social and environmental problems now confronting us, many people feel overwhelmed and powerless. It seems as though we've been conditioned to believe that we can do nothing about the world's problems. This is called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness was an experiment done by a psychologist named Martin Seligman, and he worked with dogs on learned helplessness. The cool thing about learned helplessness is that we can unlearn it. We are not helpless. We can unlearn this feeling, this overwhelm that we might get. So we think about the idea that this is crisis. Our planet is in crisis. And what crisis provides is that there is danger and opportunity. So there's opportunity for us to make those small changes. An example of that opportunity is that President Trump's new fuel economy standards, announced in final form in March 30th of this year, replaced the previous administration's standards, which would have pushed the US auto fleet to an average efficiency of 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025. But now they've lowered them to 40 miles per gallon. And by these administration calculations, the result will be about 1 billion more tons of greenhouse gases emitted over the next 5 years. So, in one stroke, this is the worst thing that the Trump administration has done for climate change. So, in essence, they're saying, yes, this will make things worse, but we're screwed, so it doesn't matter anyway. But that's not the case. I have to say that making cars more fuel efficient for 5 years won't stop the rise of the oceans or prevent catastrophic hurricane disasters, but it will help. It won't stop those things, but wouldn't it do something measurable to slow things down, to make a dire situation a little better as opposed to a little bit worse? So incrementalism is a strategy to fight climate change, but a lot of little changes can add up to big change. It's true. It happens if action is not taken, then climate change is shaping the future of our civilization. And we have the choice about how that's going to affect us. So if we think about the power of choice in how we move through our lives, what resources we use, how we can be creative to lessen our impact, how we can have courage to make those changes, it can be really powerful, and it will be really powerful. So I want you to consider what would change if we were to see all of the connections, to bring parts 1 and 2 of the course together. I'd like you to talk about this in your Zoom groups for 3 minutes at this point. At this point, everyone and every idea are now necessary parts of the solution. We are in this together. We have to be in this together. We are in one of the most creative, meaningful, and transcendent eras of human history because we have to be. We have to be. The only thing we have to do to be sure we'll leave a ruined world for our children and our grandchildren is to do exactly what we are doing now. This quote to me has both sides of being hopeful and heart-wrenching. I want grandchildren. I want them to be in a world full of joy and peace and contentedness and safety. And so I'm doing what I'm doing because I care about it. Because I think that we have possibility. Here is our Pack prompt for this week. Cultural revolution for the environment hasn't happened by trying to frighten people into caring or changing. What would happen if we act and encourage action from a place of love? Action because I love this soil, this lake, this forest, this field, this beach, this place, my neighbors, my family of living beings. So reflect on this. What would happen if we act and encourage action from a place of love? Thank you for being with me today, and I hope that you have a beautiful day.